Currently armed with leading the business agility practice at Deloitte, our next keynote speaker strives to help organizations to deliver better value, sooner, safer, and happier. With over 25 years of experience in helping teams exhibit agility, our speaker is a renowned thought leader, coach, and business agility practitioner. And not only that, he is also a member of the programming committee for the DevOps Enterprise Summit and a guest speaker at the very prestigious London Business School. He, along with his team at Barclays, were the recipients of the Best Internal Agile Team Award in 2016. And we are very pleased to have him on board with us at the DOIS, wherein he's going to share his deep thoughts today. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us on the DOIS for the very first time, let's hear it loud for the one and only Mr. Jonathan Smart.
Hi, my name's John Smart, and I'm going to talk to you about business agility, delivering better value sooner, safer, and happier. And I'm going to share with you some anti-patterns and patterns around business agility, around ways of working. I am the author of Sooner, Safer, Happier, the book, and the co-founder of Sooner, Safer, Happier, the company. We help organizations increase their business agility. Previously, I was the global business agility lead at Deloitte, and prior to that, I was leading ways of working across Barclays Bank globally. So first of all, let's start with the question why. So why are organizations on this journey around business agility? Why does improving ways of working really matter at the moment? So we've passed the tipping point in the latest technological revolution. These are repeating 40 to 60 year technology-led revolutions. The first one is the Industrial Revolution. There's an installation period, there's a new type of technology, and then there's a deployment period, which is a new normal. So in the case of the Industrial Revolution, this is mills and factories starting in northern England. Then there's the age of steam and railways. That was followed by the age of electricity and engineering, then the age of oil and mass production, and then the age of digital. So in each of these repeating 40 to 60 year cycles, there is a socio-economic impact. There are new ways of working, there's a new technology, there are new organizations, and it has an economic impact, and it has an impact on society, because there are industries that go into decline and there are new industries that grow. As you can see down the middle, in the middle, there is a bubble that bursts. So there tends to be overinflated expectations and investment. And then there's a bubble, the bubble bursts, there's a recession, and then there's a new normal. So for example, in the age of digital, 2000 was the dot-com bubble bursting. And then we had a quite prolonged recession, and unfortunately, then followed by a pandemic. 1929, Great Depression in the US, huge stock market crash. It took, I think, about 25 years before the stock market got back up to its previous levels. 1890, more than 500 banks went bust in a depression in 1890. So these are kind of repeating cycles. For each of these repeating cycles, there is a new way of working. In the Industrial Revolution, it was factory systems. So having factories for the first time, going from craft and agriculture to actually, textile mills, building fabric, textiles in factories. In the age of steam and railways, this saw the introduction of subcontracting. And this is where the term sweatshop comes from. This is zero contract hours and some pretty poor working conditions. Then we have the age of electricity and engineering, and this is the beginning of Taylorism. So this is where Frederick Winslow Taylor was working at the Bethlehem Steel Mill in Pennsylvania and started introducing time studies. and telling workers when to start working, when to stop working, to try to get efficiencies from manual labor. So this is very much command and control. And I was doing some research, reading a very old book on this topic. And the general way of working here is around the manager or the foreman, to use the word in the book, telling the worker exactly what to do and when to do it. So there's no, from a worker perspective, there's no agency, there's no ownership. So that's Taylorism. Henry Gantt, who is the creator of the Gantt chart, worked with Taylor in the early 1900s. So this is where the Gantt chart comes from. In the age of oil and mass production, we then see the rise of Fordism. So now we have a moving assembly line. We have, for the very first time, the car, the Ford Model T that's being built. There's a lot of automation in the factory. And there's, for the very first time, a moving conveyor belt that the car moves along. So we're getting more efficient. And again, and it's mass production. So it's not about craft. Previously, each individual nut and bolt had to be filed. The alternator had to be filed to fit the car. So increasingly, there was standardization, standard parts, increasingly coming into play. And then in the age of digital, now we're seeing the rise of agile and lean. So in the age of digital, more and more work is unique and it's unknowable. We don't write the same software 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times like we might build a car 1,000,000, 10 million times. You write software once. So increasingly, the type of work is unique. So now we're seeing the rise of agile as a ways of working, and lean, where lean is the evolution of Fordism. So this is the Toyota production system. Agile is about unique change. That's something you've never done before. And lean is optimizing for repetitive activity that you've done 1,000,000 times. And that includes knowledge work, not only physically building things in a factory. Interestingly, project management comes from 2 technology revolutions ago. As I said, Henry Gantt, the creator of the Gantt chart, worked with Taylor in the early 1900s. So there are lots of organizations that are still applying a way of working in the context of change, which is over 100 years old and comes from 2 technology revolutions ago. And we've known for some time that we can do better. These photos are from the Ford Model T factory in Detroit. This is the first Ford factory. As I said, it's repetitive and it's knowable. You can see in the top left, people are making a wheel for the car day in, day out. It's the same repetitive activity. Top right, they're making a gas tank, a petrol tank for the car. And so again, it's repetitive and it's knowable. There are known unknowns. If something goes wrong, you know how to fix it. So we as humans, as people, we got very good at repetitive work and organizing repetitive work. Now in the age of digital, the predominant type of work has significantly shifted, because we can get computers and robots to do the repetitive work for us. It could be repetitive knowledge work, where we get computers to do that for us, automation. It could be repetitive physical work, where we have robots driven by computers to do, on an assembly line, for example, creating cars. There's a whole load of robot arms creating cars. So in terms of what we as humans, as people, are increasingly doing, we are spending more and more of our time in organizations focused on unique change, the latest innovation, the new products. What are we going to build next? And again, if for software, you don't write the same software 100,000 times. You write it once, you realize you could have written it better, you rewrite it a second time, and then you move on. So organizations need to build a competence in being very good at the unknown and the unknowable. Unique change is not knowable. It's never been done before, and we cannot time travel. So this is a really important fundamental mindset point, which is why I have this point at the beginning. It's a mindset of acknowledging that the future is unknowable and then treating that inherent unknowableness as a competitive advantage. The organizations that will survive and thrive will be the best at dealing with uncertainty, the best at dealing with the fact that the future is unknowable and unpredictable. That means having psychological safety, being able to experiment, being able to pivot, being able to learn really fast, the cheapest cost of intelligent failure. So this is a really fundamental mindset shift. And this is why organizations are on this journey. So we have a new means of production. We have almost, it feels like unlimited compute capacity, storage, communication. The customer is at the center. There are new expectations, and those expectations are being created either by disruptors, new companies who are totally getting the most out of the new means of production. So kind of digital native type companies. They are creating new expectations, and also traditional competitors who are very good at reinventing themselves and leveraging, again, the new means of production. So in order to survive and thrive, it is necessary to adopt new ways of working suited to the new means of production. Survival is not mandatory. Change is not mandatory. In order to survive and thrive, it is worth embracing new ways of working. Organizations that don't embrace new ways of working, don't embrace new means of production, it's not a case of standing still. It's actually a case of going backwards pretty quickly because other organizations are moving forwards. So that's the why. Now on to the how. So I'm going to share some anti-patterns and patterns around increasing business agility, delivering better outcomes. I like the language of patterns and anti-patterns because there is no one size fits all. There is no cookie cutter. There is no silver bullet. There's no magical snake oil that will fix all of your problems. There are patterns which are usually successful and will give you a tailwind and make a hard job slightly less hard. There are anti-patterns which generally will give you a headwind and they will make a hard job harder. Now, this is based on personal learning. I've made what I consider the anti-patterns, I consider them to be mistakes on the whole. I've made all these mistakes. So this is based on personal learning as well as learning from other companies. So the first learning is, do you want to do an agile transformation? If you do, my advice is don't. Instead, focus on the outcomes. The learning, my personal learning on this back in 2015, we were running an agile transformation. I was the lead for the agile transformation. It was all about agile. How many teams are doing agile? We were measuring how many teams are doing agile, but that's looking in the wrong place. Agile, DevOps, digital is a means to an end. It's not the end. It's not the goal. You can have as many people as you like doing Scrum. It doesn't necessarily mean your outcomes are going to improve. A good example of that is Nokia Mobile, Symbian operating system. Nokia were doing Scrum across, and were doing it very well. However, that didn't save Symbian. According to the chairman of Nokia, the thing that led to the demise of Nokia Mobile was a lack of psychological safety. So bad news was not being communicated to senior leaders. So the outcomes to focus on that I have found to work are, number one, better. Better is quality. And this is building quality in rather than inspecting it in later. To quote W. Edward Deming, if you inspect quality in later, it's kind of like saying, you burn the toast and I'll scrape. Tell you what, don't burn the toast in the first place. The next outcome is value. Value is unique. It's why you're in business. You could be making jet engines. You could be a bank. You might be a technology company. like primarily a technology company. I think every company needs to be a technology company, but you could be primarily a technology company. You could be a fashion label. So value is unique to whatever it is you're doing, and it's measured through OKRs, objectives and key results. The objective is the goal. The key results are the measures of value. That's how you're articulating value. Sooner is the heart. This is at the heart of agile and lean. Sooner is time to value. It's time to learning. It's lead time from concept to cash, from starting work on something to getting it into the hands of the consumer. And the shorter your lead time, the quicker your time to value, the quicker you can pivot, the quicker you can learn. You'll have a cheapest cost of failure. And that gives you genuine business agility. So it's so important. Flow efficiency is a measure of the time that work is being worked on versus work is waiting. Most large companies have a flow efficiency of only 10%, which means that work is waiting 90% of the time. The next outcome is safer. Safer is agile, not fragile. It's continuous compliance. This is not leaking your customer data onto the internet. And then happier is happier customers, colleagues, citizens, and climate, because improving ways of working is not at any cost to the planet or to society. And these set of outcomes balance each other out nicely. You can't force sooner, for example, making people work harder rather than smarter, because if you do that, quality goes down and happiness goes down. So they balance each other out nicely, and you get into a virtuous upward circle when you do this well. In terms of the benefits that we've seen a 20 times improvement on quality. And this was over a roughly 3.5 year time period with tens of thousands of people. Failure demand reduced by a factor of 20. On average, teams were delivering value and they were learning 3 times quicker. So a 300% improvement on lead time. And the best teams were 20 times faster, 20 times sooner time to value. On compliance, we saw a positive compliance trend. We saw a reduced impact radius. So if something did go wrong, it was a whimper rather than a bang. And colleagues who were in the specialist compliance and risk type roles, the anecdotal feedback is that they were spending 80% of their time proactively now, preventing things from going wrong, rather than 80% of their time reactively previously. And we saw the highest colleague engagement scores from an independent third-party survey, and we saw a positive client net promoter score trend. So that's the size of the prize. Those are the types of benefits. And I think to the top right, to sooner, a 2 times to 3 times improvement on time to value, I think is very achievable for most companies. I don't think it's that difficult when you're looking in the right place and know what to look for. The anti-pattern is Agile, Lean, DevOps Cloud for the sake of Agile, Lean, DevOps Cloud. Again, they are a means to an end, not the end. So the big learning here is focus on the outcomes. Now, these outcomes, these pictures here, they're deliberately fuzzy, so that because that's kind of real data. So the deliberately fuzzy, that this is your measure of success. This is how you can articulate benefits. So these are 2 examples of 2 dashboards, and they have measures for better value, sooner, safer, happier. And you can see a trend. You can see red means it's either going in the wrong direction or not improving at the desired gradient in terms of the rate of improvement. Green obviously is a healthy indicator that things are improving. So this is what I have found to work. This is what I'd recommend in terms of what you measure. Measure the trend on the outcomes. Measure the trend on better value, sooner, safer, happier. Another learning here, in year 1, we had targets, and I would advise against targets for improvement in ways of working, because what we saw is some negative behavior. We saw some gaming of the system. And if people are incentivized to achieve targets, you've got to watch out for the unintended consequences. So watch out for weaponized metrics. Sometimes people will achieve them at almost any cost, which is not good. So make sure they're balanced. And then what I found to work is we're looking for a positive trend. And it's up to you as empowered colleagues, empowered teams, as to you choose how much you want to that trend, how steep you want that trend to be, that makes most sense in your context and is most valuable in your context. Lesson learned number 2. Do you want to scale agile? Most people will say yes. Most people will want to scale agile. My advice would be don't. Rather, continuously descale the work and achieve big through small. So rather than taking a large bureaucratic organization, then trying to scale agile on that large bureaucratic organization with lots of people without a focus on simplification, without a focus on descaling, I think that's an anti-pattern. And actually there's a learning here where one organization had 100 people trying to deliver a particular product in a traditional manner. It failed. Another 100 people trying to deliver this product in a traditional manner. So now you've got 200 people trying to deliver it. Again, it failed. No value was realized. We took 5 people, and those 5 people managed to deliver value into the hands of the customer within about 3 months, within about 12 weeks. So the problem there was the fact that it wasn't a 100-person problem or a 200-person problem. The problem was there were too many people. And so descaling the work is so important. So I would start with descaling, descale to the lowest level, and scaling is the recomposition of a descaled organization with high cohesion and low coupling. One job to do it well, minimize the dependencies. That it's not about scaling agile vertically like big iron, like big hardware. It's about being nimble. Achieve big through small. So my favorite definition of what is agile is think big, start small, learn fast. Think big. We've got a very clear intent. We know where we're heading. Start small. What's the smallest experiment we can run? Because the future is unknowable. We don't know what we don't know. We have unknown unknowns. And then learn fast. And once we've learned, we can reflect, we can pivot, we can continue. The anti-pattern is to think big, start big, and learn slow, which is a traditional approach. And you may be surprised how many organizations approach ways of working business agility with a think big, start big, learn slow approach. So spending too long trying to design it in PowerPoint, doing a big bang rollout, typically a big bang org design with very slow learning. This picture, the large green line, is an illustration of what happens in a big bang and a capital T transformation. This is the Kubler-Ross curve. The green line is a Kubler-Ross curve. You have a peak of excitement, you have a trough of disillusionment and despair, and eventually you climb your way out of the hole. If you have a very large change, the trough of disillusionment will be deeper and it will last longer through to time T2. And in my experience, when organizations do a big bang type approach, you're looking at 18 months, 24 months, maybe 2.5, 3 years before you climb out of that hole. Quite often what I observe is CIO, COO, or the CEO, a senior leader, one or more senior leaders, have moved on before time T2 because there's been a period of chaos. So the learning here, far better to start small. And actually smaller is faster. It's within people's ability to unlearn and relearn. It's within the speed of learning. And it's also within risk appetite because you're not betting the entire company on a pivot to capital A agile. You're not pivoting everyone to something overnight. So it's within risk appetite. And it's applying an agile mindset to agility. Start small, experiment, learn, repeat. amplify the things that work, dampen the things that don't. As I said, people have a limited velocity to unlearn and relearn. So therefore, the pace of change is determined by the speed of unlearning. So if there is a desire to have a fast pace of change, the question is, how do we enable unlearning and relearning as quickly as possible? So this is all about culture, and this is all about behavior and people feeling like they have psychological safety, and also about appealing to the natural champions in the organization, which leads me on to anti-pattern pair number 3. Do you want to mandate one way of working? You'll be surprised how many organizations do mandate one way of working top down across the organization. My advice is don't. Instead, invite over inflict. And it's not one size fits all. So my strong advice in learning here is don't inflict, one mandated size fits all across an organization, because an organization has many different contexts, many different environments. There's no such thing as one size fits all. Your organization is unique. Within your unique organization, there are unique contexts within your organization. You cannot possibly optimize for outcomes by making everyone do everything the same way. In terms of the invitation point, the learning here is invite over inflict. Invite participation. This is the diffusion of innovation curve from Everett Rogers 1962. And 508 studies went into this around how people embrace change. It's normally distributed. You have your innovators, who are 3 standard deviations to the left. Then you have your early adopters. Then you have your early majority, your late majority, and then finally your laggards. So the learning here is to start with your innovators. Identify your innovators and early adopters. And they are typically motivated by scarcity. The first to have an electric car, the first to have a Tesla, the first to have an Apple Watch, the first to have an iPhone. Don't mind if it's not perfect. It's fine if the Tesla only has a range of 70 miles. Probably like a bit of risk. Maybe as people, maybe a bit of a generalization, maybe like adrenaline sports, get a bit of a buzz, like being on the leading edge. And then you have crossing the chasm when you get into the early majority. And in order to cross the chasm, you need to have social proof. So storytelling, communicate 3 more times than you think you need to, you're a third of the way done. Tell the stories around what has worked with the innovators and also what hasn't worked. So, be vulnerable. So then you start getting into your early majority. The water's warm, come in, pat on the back, recognition for people who are improving outcomes. And then finally, you have your laggards. The learning here is don't spend time trying to convince anyone of anything. The words convince and resistance shouldn't enter your vocabulary if you're going about change the right way. And what I found is that once you get to the point that it's kind of only the laggards left with traditional ways of working, I found that people who are more conservative and a little bit more resistant to change or kind of want to hang on to the current ways of working don't like being the odd ones out. And what I've found is there's then a mad rush once laggards realize that everyone else is now working with better ways of working and people are happier, things are getting done sooner, there's more value, customers are happier, colleagues are happier. There's then a mad rush in, like, we're in, because we don't like being the odd ones out. Whereas the innovators on the left like being the odd ones out. So the another learning to watch out for there is I've then seen some of the innovators start to disengage, because now it's the normal, now it's the new norm. And so, I want to be an innovator. I want to be on the leading edge. So a learning for me there is, as the laggards start to come in, think about what, the latest evolution is, what the new ways of working that innovators can keep on experimenting with. When you draw the normal probability distribution as a cumulative probability distribution, it's an S-curve. So this is a really important learning. This is how humans embrace change. It's an S-curve. So my advice and learning here is keep in an organization embracing better ways of working. Keep the gradient to change low to start with. And this is my narrative with leadership teams. Don't try to do too much too soon. Keep the gradient to change low. Prove it. Nail it before you scale it. Prove it in your context. As you prove it, and as you remove some of the impediments, and as people unlearn and relearn, then you can start to increase the gradient. Then you can start to go faster. And then eventually you'll tail off, 80-20 rule, you'll tail off at the top, and then find your next S-curve. What's the next set of improvements? And practices equal principles plus context. So your principles, your guiding principles should be common because they apply across contexts. For example, optimize for the fast flow of value is a principle. Respect for people is a principle. Multidisciplinary teams with empowerment and autonomy is a principle. Your context is unique, so therefore your practices will be unique. Back to this point of there is no one size fits all. The anti-pattern is inflicting the golden hammer. If the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Lesson learned number 4 is, do you want to delegate change? And I'm sure we've all seen this quite often at organizations. My advice is don't. Leadership behavior will make it or break it. So I believe that everyone is a leader. It's leaders at all levels. It's not someone else as a leader. So for you as a leader, it's not a case of, go on, colleagues, transform, or, if you have responsibility for people, then it's not a case of go on team, transform, tell me when you're done. It's about role modeling and not delegating change, but owning that change and leading from the front. So leaders go first, and there is a need to role model. There is a need to exhibit vulnerability and courage. You might fail, and that's okay. And actually, people are not trying hard enough if there's no failure. And it's not failure, it's learning. There needs to be psychological safety. If there is a lack of psychological safety, nobody will experiment and nobody will improve because there's a lack of psychological safety. I might get verbally shot down. I might get a bad performance appraisal. I might not get paid. I can't pay the mortgage. I need to feed my family. So there has to be psychological safety. And then finally, an emergent mindset. So this is back to the point at the beginning about treating the future as unknowable. The opposite of an emergent mindset is a deterministic mindset. So a deterministic mindset is the anti-pattern, which is we can put together a Gantt chart, a project plan. We can view the future as knowable. Now, the definition of success is hitting the project plan. No, that project plan's been put together at the point of learning the least and knowing the least. So it's about the competitive advantage here is around acknowledging that the future is not knowable and having options and variability and running multiple experiments in order to optimize for the outcomes. Ways of working is 80% people and only 20% process and tooling. It is not about rolling out Scrum or any of the various flavors of Scrum at scale. It is not about agile as a methodology. It is not about rolling out Jenkins or Jira. It is about culture and behavior, by far and away, the biggest lever. 80% culture, only 20% process and tooling. So if organizations come at it with that approach, then there is a much higher probability of being successful in improving outcomes. So the anti-pattern is change is for you, not me. Command and control, do as I say. Inflict over invite. We're going to mandate that you all have to do synchronized 2-week iterations, whether you like it or not. and a culture of fear where the messenger is shot. And so people bury bad news, which was the problem for Symbian. Lesson learned number 5. Do you want to do agile in IT only? You'll be surprised how many organizations do agile in IT only. My advice is don't. It has to be whole organization agility. A system of local optimums is not an optimum system, to quote Ellie Goldratt, who wrote The Goal. So it's not about local optimization. This picture, the boxes that are blue is where work is being worked on. Where the boxes are grey, that's where work is waiting. And as I mentioned earlier, most firms have a flow efficiency of 10% or less, which means that work is waiting 90% of the time. And if we look at this, the reasons why, typically it's because of annual budgeting, because of a steering committee, because of a design committee, a cost review board, a resource allocation process, 26 dependent teams downstream. Finally, 12, 18, 24 months later, there's some learning and some value. Most of the time, work is waiting. But you speak to IT, speak to software development, and the answer is, yay, we're agile. But you know what? You could reduce that blue box there by 50%. You can halve the lead time. It's going to have a tiny impact on the end-to-end flow of value. That might have like a 5 or 10% impact in terms of time to value. So the trick here is to look at where the work isn't rather than where the work is, because there's more grey, there is more waiting in that picture than there is working. So focus where the work isn't. Why is work queuing up? A good saying, impediments are not in the path, impediments are the path. This is why work is waiting. Work is waiting because of impediments to flow, to the flow of value. It could be the steering committee process. It could be the design committee process, which means that work is waiting. It could be dependent teams downstream. So how do you break those dependencies? So to improve ways of working, it's a constant journey around going from impediment to impediment to impediment. And this is the theory of constraints. What's the biggest impediment to flow? Alleviate it, repeat. The anti-pattern is a local optimization in IT only. Lesson learned number 6 out of 7 is, do you want to do water scrum 4? My advice is don't. You'll be surprised how many organizations do water scrum 4. Instead, build the right thing and have a focus on outcomes over output. And this is the pivot of organizing by role to organizing by value with multidisciplinary teams. This is a pivot from a focus on output. Did we deliver the thing in the Gantt chart, in the project plan? To a focus on outcomes. Have we maximized our outcomes? It's a pivot from temporary project teams who come together, do some work, and then disband, to long-lived teams on long-lived products. And it's a pivot from a focus on milestones, where the milestone is the definition of success, to learning and value. How quickly can we learn? How much can we learn? And how can we maximize value? The definition of success is value, both to the producer and the consumer. And this is a pivot from productivity to valuativity. So valuativity is a word that I've made up, and it's the most value in the shortest time with the least effort. Productivity is the number of units of output per unit of input. And we don't want a feature factory. We don't want to just keep producing widgets faster and faster and faster, because making the wrong thing faster just makes us more wrong. It makes us wronger. Bad grammar makes us more wrong. So we do want valuativity. We want the most value in the shortest time with the least effort. That's another way of saying weightest, shortest job first. For those of you who may be familiar with that term, or CD3, cost of delay divided by duration, which are good ways to think about prioritization. Most value in the shortest time with the least effort. We want the fast flow of safe value. That's what we want to optimize for, end to end. And there are two ways to focus on this. There's organize the work and organize people to optimize for flow. So first of all, organize the work. And this is where OKRs come in. Objectives and key results are a really good way, in my opinion, to articulate value and the work it is that people are doing. I like to articulate OKRs as a hypothesis. So, for example, due to this insight, belief, or strategic intent, we believe that this capability will result in this outcome. We know we're successful when key result 1, 2, 3, leading and lagging value measures. The leading measures let you know that you're going in the right direction, an early indicator, and the lagging value measures are your actual articulation of value. So, for example, if we looked at a worked example, due to a desire to increase market share, we believe that an online loan application in 5 minutes or less will result in an increase in the secured loan market share. We'll know we're on the right track when by Q2, advertising click-throughs have gone up 20%, loan applications have gone up 10%, key result 3, the secured loan market share, we have increased our market share by 5%. So as you can see there, key result 1 and 2 are leading indicators. There's more clicks on the advertising. We've had more applications. That's a good indicator that we are likely to increase our market share. I also particularly like the due to statement at the top, due to a desire to increase market share, because that helps the organization to articulate why. Why are we doing this? Why do we want to have a secured loan application in 5 minutes? It's because we want to increase market share. Now, there will be a parent OKR to this one, which a higher level, which should articulate why do we want to increase market share? We want to increase market share because we want to grow the organization. That might be a top level strategic intent, might be growth. We want to grow our business, or maybe we want to be number one in our market globally. Maybe that's the top level intent. So OKRs are really good at providing high alignment for multidisciplinary teams. There's a very clear goal, which is to increase market share. And then teams can pivot, and it's not about a fixed solution. We think that the online secured loan application will get us there, but it might not. It might be something completely different. And so teams can pivot and experiment in order to maximize the outcome. So again, the focus is on the outcome, not on the output. OKR alignment. So as you scale OKRs across an organization, OKRs have children and they have parents. So let's take a look at this. You have your quarterly OKR. Though what I recommend is these are broken down into monthly experiments. And so a monthly experiment might be, we're going to run a pilot on our web application with a customer focus group in month 1. Maybe 10 customers, we're going to pilot a new product with an MVP, a minimal viable product, a minimal viable proposition to get some fast feedback. You break your experiments down into maybe weekly iterations if you're taking an iteration-based approach, maybe single piece flow if it's a Kanban type approach, and you have your daily stories. When you go up your quarterly OKRs aligned to an annual OKR, this is the pattern that I have found to work well. It's an alignment, not a cascade. So teams at each level are responsible for writing their own OKRs. It's not a hand-me-down. It's not a top-down cascade. It's alignment. And if you'll probably have multiple annual OKRs, you'll have multiple products, multiple business units. So you'll have multiple annual OKRs. They group up into multi-year OKRs. So this is our kind of roughly 3-year intent. So now we're getting into kind of strategy alignment, and we've got a strategic intent. In 3 years, these are the goals we want to achieve. On the right, you might have one business unit. On the left, you might have another business unit in your organization. And then for large organizations with multiple business units, you may have an overall group level set of strategic objectives. And this is the multi-year vision. This could be 3 to 5 years. It could be 10 years. If it's Toyota, it could be a 30-year vision. So you have on the left, you have strategy alignment. You have a link from execution to strategy, articulated as outcomes, not articulated as solutions. On the right, you have benefits realization built in, because the KR in OKR, the key results, they are your measures of value. And what I've found to work here is a monthly cadence on your quarterly OKRs. So once a month, you're looking at the feedback loop on your key results. Are we heading in the right direction? Do we need to pivot? So from a financial perspective, this is really good, because you're getting at least a monthly, if not more frequently, you're getting a monthly feedback on your investment, on your finance, which is typically far better than any organization has ever had in the past, in my experience. Now moving on to organize the people. So that's organizing the work. Now organizing the people. And this is the long-lived teams on long-lived products. So these horizontal rows, these are value streams. This is the flow of value from the left to the right, concept to cash, an idea to learning. The circles with the colors in them in the middle, those are your multidisciplinary teams. And they are long-lived teams aligned to long-lived products. And those products and those value streams are aligned to customers. So you can start to build up a view of the unarticulated needs of the customer. So the example on the screen here, this is a banking example. We've got the retail bank at the top. Notice that the value streams are nested. There is a nesting within the value streams. So within the retail bank, we have savings. We might also have everyday banking, current account. We then have the investment bank in the middle. Within that, we have equity trading and research. At the bottom, we have a shared service value stream, or value streams, which typically include HR, procurement, finance, data, infrastructure, IT infrastructure, and so on. So shared service value streams at the bottom, which are supporting the customer-facing value streams above. Then, with your long-lived multidisciplinary teams, you apply the OKR alignment that we were just looking at, and bingo, now you've got high alignment and you can have high autonomy. You've got long-lived teams who go through forming, storming, norming, performing. They become high-performing teams. They've got a long-lived product. They're aligned to the customer. There's minimal handoffs. So you're minimizing work waiting. And you've got a very clear set of quarterly outcomes, which the teams are empowered to experiment to maximize. So this is the success pattern for organizing the work and organizing the workers. And this is the pivot from projects and temporary teams and role-based silos. And on the left is the funding. So it's not a case of funding projects. It's a case, the target state here, which you don't get to overnight. The target state is capacity funding the value streams. And then your job with the OKRs is to maximize the value that you return for your level of investment. The anti-pattern is not being value stream aligned, predetermined output over outcomes, and running agile projects, for example, water, scrum, fall. And now, finally, lesson learned number 7. Do you want to create a digital feature factory? If you do, my advice is don't. Instead, go slower to go faster, or you will end up going slower. It's not about velocity, feature, because what happens is there's technical debt, there's process debt, there's cultural debt, behavior debt. So you have to continuously improve. You have to go slower to go faster, or whether you like it or not, you will go slower. I like this picture. Quite often, this is something that I see in organizations. Sorry, we're too busy pulling the cart with the square wheels to have a conversation about the round wheels. Unfortunately, far too common. So this is the improvement Carter from Mike Rother, based on Toyota. So first of all, get your desired strategic outcome. So this is might be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year strategic outcome, place you want to get to, for example, better value, sooner, safer, happier. Number 2, understand your current condition, your current state, and then articulate your roughly quarterly outcome, so roughly 3 months in the future. So you don't know how you're going to get there. It's just beyond your knowledge threshold. And then number 4, run experiments to get there. It's not a straight line. We can't predict the future. The future is unknowable. So you have to run experiments. Again, impediments are not in the path. Impediments are the path. So when you hit an impediment, you need to alleviate it, deal with it. Don't leave it intact for the next teams, the next set of teams to hit the same impediment. And improving daily work is as important as daily work. The anti-pattern is a lack of continuous improvement and experimentation by everybody. And a transformation project with an end date. There is no end date. This needs to be continuous. Human systems entropy. And what I mean by that is the weeds, if you take your foot off the gas, if you take your foot off of the accelerator, weeds will start to grow back. Bureaucracy starts to grow. So you have to continuously keep your foot on the gas. You have to keep on simplifying the system of work. So to recap then, number 1, focus on the outcomes, better value, sooner, safer, happier. Number 2, achieve big through small. Number 3, invite over inflict. And it's not a case of one size fits all. Number 4, leaders go first, role model, psychological safety, and an emergent mindset. Number 5, it has to be whole enterprise agility, not just in IT. Number 6, it's outcomes over output, and it's about optimizing for the time to learning. And number 7, you're never done improving. You have to keep on. Everyone build that DNA, build that muscle memory of everyone continuously improving. So some questions to ask in the organization, and you should notice the language changing in an organization as you improve your ways of working. So the language that you should be using, and you should hear other people using, is what's the desired outcome rather than what's the output. So it's not a case of, how are we doing on delivering Project Alpha, where we've kind of forgotten what Project Alpha is trying to do in the first place. So the question is, what is the outcome? What are we trying to achieve? The second question to be asking is, dear colleagues, how can we optimize for the speed to learning and speed to value? What else can we do to minimize time to learning? There is always something you can do to minimize time to learning. The next question is, what have we learned? What are we going to learn next? And how quickly can we learn it? And this is taking inspiration from the coaching kata from Mike Rother, which takes inspiration from Toyota. So whether this is agile or lean, unique or repetitive work, the question is, what have we learned? What are we going to learn next? And how quickly can we learn it? The fourth question is, are we continuously improving how we do what we do? So ask yourself that question on a regular basis. Am I improving how I work on a regular basis? Am I treating improvement as a first-class citizen of work? Am I spending time on improving how I do what I do as well as what I do? And how can I help alleviate impediments, dear colleagues, so that you can get your job done? Servant leadership, how can you help remove blockers? So those are some of the questions that I would advise you're asking yourself, you're asking colleagues, and you should be hearing other people use those questions. Thank you very much.